Ooh, we're back, baby. Horns up, talking Texas pod. Fisher Disciples, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. Early signing period for the recruits. The next group of freshmen, the new blood coming in. We kicked ass once again. Number one recruit thus far, 2025 class. The Texas Longhorns locked it in today. Absolutely dominant out of Sark and the boys. And how, if you're a recruit, and you saw what went down on Saturday and how that team responded to, you know what, I felt, at least from watching on the television, it looked like a pretty hostile environment, and that team went in there and took care of business. If you're a recruit, how are you not absolutely jacked to the tits to join the Texas Longhorns?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the TexAgs post that some of the Aggies were posting post game, and one of my favorite bits inside there was all the major recruits that came and visited. We pretty much, I'm speaking Aggie, terminology here, that they paid for the ticket basically just to watch Texas beat on A&M, and those kids want to go to Texas now. So,
well, I actually think they got some of those guys. So I think they had a pretty
no, it's an
decent
overreaction by the Aggies, but it's still
Oh,
fun.
I mean, they're king overreactions. But look, I mean, this is just once again Sark, and Banks and Flood and this entire crew going out and securing a great class. Jonah Williams, the safety from Galveston, was crystal ball to us, I believe, for a long period of time, but we locked him in. And there's actually, of all the guys that we've seen and been discussing, I've seen the most tape of him and the most highlights from him on social media, and that guy's a thumper. But you look at the success that Michael Taff is having, the success that Makuba is having in his transfer over, the success that Derek Williams was having. Like, this is a great system for defensive backs. And if you're a really strong safety, like Sark's proven in the past, and you're really good and you're ready to go, it's not going to go by what class you are or what grade you're in. Like, you're going to play. The best player is going to play. So a kid like Williams, who seems pretty ready to go and is a big thumper, he could come in and slot in when a guy like Taff leaves, when a guy like Makuba leaves for the pros. So I thought that was a really exciting pickup for me, and also locking in Lance Jackson's brother. That was or Lance Jackson, Landon Jackson's brother. Yes, that was really exciting because look, his brother went to Arkansas, was a great player at Arkansas, but the fact that we could bring him in again, like, that goes to show so many players made plays on Saturday, which I think was a great moment for the Texas Longhorns. Burke, Sorrell, Simmons. Like, if you're an edge and you're good, you're going to get in the rotation on the defensive line. So I got really excited about the defensive guys personally.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about the safeties, of course. We also landed kind of last minute Michael Terry III. He's the number one athlete in his class with all the rankings. But I'm really excited about just kind of bringing back DBU. I mean, obviously we've had such a great resurgence of the defensive backs this year with Jade Barron and with Michael Taff, as you mentioned, and Makuba coming in there. But the corners as well have had a great run, and I feel like we're just going to continue to add to that. And I think one guy even mentioned in the recruiting trail too, that I think it might have been Michael Terry, that, he looks and sees what they've been doing with our defensive backs. And he mentioned, I think, Jade Barron by name. And that's like, I mean, there's nothing more than just like showing the proof is in the pudding. You know what I mean? Like, it's just expecting results. And that's just these guys playing well, being coached well. I've also heard a lot. This is just like in general. I mean, we've talked to people in the past too that say the same thing. Blake Gideon's a great recruiter as well. He's a guy that doesn't get mentioned as much. He's a little bit younger, played for the Longhorns, but as a defensive back coach, I think these guys really relate to him in a way. And I think, when we talked to Jake Hubenak last week about how the recruiting process went for him and how, Banks was his recruiter at A&M, it's something that like the outside world doesn't really get a glimpse of, is like the person behind the phone call or behind the visit, right? Like being able to relate to that person, being able to trust that person and have that person mold you as eventually a professional, right? But also a better man too. So shout out to just every single one that's been involved in this whole recruiting process on our coaching staff. But yeah, I'm with you on the defensive side. It's looking really nice, and it's not over yet either. There's still a lot of big fish out there. There's one guy out of Georgia that we have a slight chance to land, and he's going to make his announcement on Friday. So we'll know here, in a matter of 24 to 48 hours where he goes. Justice Terry, and he is one of the big fish in this class, top 10 consensus everywhere and all the rankings. It's between us and Georgia, and he said that his recruitment is locked down. So that's it. And it's funny that he's going to announce before our game, which is on Saturday, right? So hopefully we secure 2 wins against Georgia this week.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I think just adding on to all of this good conversation that the two of y'all have already had. I mean, these top 4 recruits that we've had, they're all at positions where we've really excelled in the last 2 seasons. In the Big 12, we win the Big 12 championship last year. We go to the college football playoff. Obviously, our wide receivers were king, right? Adonai Mitchell, and of course Xavier Worthy, and they're both having an impact in the league right now. That's Khalil Lockett, right? He's a 5-star. He's out of Saxe. He's a receiver. He could play next year. He'll get the opportunity to be in this system that utilizes wide receivers incredibly well. I'm not surprised, that he stayed in the state of Texas. And not to mention those 4 recruits at the top, Jonah Williams, Khalil Lockett, Michael Terry, and then Cade Phillips. They're all Texas kids. So that was something that's really, really important. You gotta win your pipeline states. And obviously Texas is more than just a pipeline state. It's pipeline regions, right, within this state because it's so big. And a win against A&M in College Station is certainly a message sender. And that's why some of the Texags and some of the crazed fans, just like every team has their crazed fans, go off the rails when they have a big loss against a huge rival. I just wanted to mention also, like, Michael Terry, 6'3", he's 217. He's an athlete. He played running back. He played wide receiver. He also played on the other side of the ball in high school. The versatility of Sark's offense and what he offers, a guy lines up in the backfield, a guy gets kicked out wide to the slot. I can see how that would be enticing for a guy as talented as Michael Terry.
He played a little tight end too. And
he's huge. He's a huge kid. You imagine that guy lining up as the running back, 6'3", 217.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple inches and like 30-something pounds between him and French and Lockett. Like that, he's a massive boy. And you talk about Cade Phillips as well, being from Mo City. He was an LSU guy, so we flipped him to Texas. That's really controlling your home court, like you're saying, and that's really dominating in your state, which was such a thing that we back in the day, like one of the biggest complaints we had, people would come into our own backyard and take our shit.
I think we dominated, but I think we didn't dominate as much as I'd like to, because if you look at some of the guys who are from the state who ended up going elsewhere, they're big guys that we really wanted to land, right? Though I think the highlight of that group is Michael Fasusi, the offensive tackle that committed to OU. And obviously that hurts because, that's our rival. But he had a visit at Texas, and he's from Louisville, Texas. And, I don't think we did a great job this recruiting class on the offensive line as years prior, obviously. I mean, it's hard to beat the recruiting class that we had with Banks and Campbell and all those guys, right? And even last year. But you want to continue to build in those trenches, right? Like that's something that we've been able to do over the last couple of years, and it's been great. But
you're right. The only disagreement I would have with you on him, if he's the top tackle, right?
Yeah.
So if you're the top tackle and you look at our team, we just brought in Brandon Baker, who's going to play next year. And then what happened on Saturday? Like if the whole world's watching on Saturday, our number 1 offensive lineman goes down, Gooseby comes right in. Like there's no way he's not going to start next year. It's going to be him and Baker on either side. So my only caveat to what you're saying is it would have been great to nail him. Like he wants to play right away. So he wants to come in right away and play. So it doesn't make the fit. Like that's like another thing is like a lot of these guys, like I look at the kid from Texas that went to Bama, like the quarterback, Keelan Russell from Duncanville. Like,
yeah. That's okay. Yeah. So like, that's one that I would like write off just because we know the situation going on right now with quarterback. But his Duncanville teammate, DeCorian Moore, right, committed to Oregon. This kid, Devin Sanchez, cornerback from Houston, North Shore, committed to Ohio State. I'm not okay with OU stealing recruits from us, but that's their own backyard too. Texas and OU are pretty much in Oklahoma,
sure.
Same state, same pipeline. But Ohio State and Oregon, like taking Texas kids, like that sucks.
Well, we got to be real. You got to be realistic about it too. I mean, we're the number one recruiting class right now. So I think we have to be comfortable with that. That hasn't happened in a long time. And the fact that we're there, I mean, obviously we've had top 10, we've had top 5 recruiting classes, but number one is a separate distinction. I mean, we lose that quarterback to Alabama, like you're talking about, Josh, but we get a 4-star quarterback, KJ Lacey, who's from Alabama.
Yeah.
So it's like it's give and take, not to mention teams like Michigan, teams like Ohio State, teams like Oregon, all in the new era of college football, in the transfer portal era, in the NIL era. There's so much money being thrown around that at a certain point it's an impossibility to get every single one of these kids. I'll throw out for the Oklahoma kid, like Texas in the last 8 years, we have produced NFL talent from the offensive line standpoint, but not at the same clip and not at the same level and pedigree as Oklahoma. If you want to be an excellent offensive lineman and get a ton of looks now, especially now that Oklahoma's in the SEC, they've always produced elite offensive line talent. We have that, I believe, on our roster right now. And I think in 3 years, we'll be able to point at the NFL and look and say, okay, look how many starting offensive linemen have come from the University of Texas in the last 3 years. That's why you want to be here. But for the last 5 years, it's hard to say outside of Georgia and Alabama that Oklahoma hasn't been the third best offensive line school.
We do, I believe, are you're completely right. But I believe that it's the word is getting loud that we may have the best offensive line coach in the country, and it's proving such. And we'll see. Like Saturday's a big day for us. Of course, we have a chance to get revenge, right? But I'm looking at these other recruits. Like also, like we have Lockett, we have French. Like if you're Decorian Moore, like too many dicks in the dance floor. You're gonna come to Texas, like you're the number one wide receiver. Go to Oregon where you could probably play.
No, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, on top of what we already have this year and what else we're going to add in the transfer portal. I mean, people are already saying just because, it's Texas, but Micah Hudson is, he's transferring from Texas Tech. Like he could be a Longhorn next season.
If you're Micah Hudson, where do you want to go?
He could be, he could not be. But I think at this point, we've been shown by our staff and how they recruit that they know exactly what they're looking for and that the elite talent will come to them. And then it's a question of yes or no. Are you right for us or not? Because they're clearly, I mean, Jonte Cook leaving. I'm not even going to go into like conversing about what that means and for him. And we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but like at a certain point, it was a mutual decision. And I believe that report that initially came out because sometimes guys they're not the right fit. It doesn't mean that they can't excel elsewhere. And, he's going to have a look because he's a talented kid. And I'm sure he's going to be productive on the field. And I think all three of us want that. I can't say the same for every single other Texas Longhorn fan, but I certainly know that there is a lot of support from the Texas Longhorn nation towards him, especially you see that on Twitter because he's still supporting his guys. So I think like we're in a really, really good position where the top of the list, we got some Texas talent that we needed to, but we also picked some guys up in different, like, for French he's from Florida, right? We hit Florida, we hit Alabama, we hit Louisiana, we hit Georgia, like we hit California.
In Jacksonville, he had a billboard that had his picture committed to Texas, like
I love that.
on the highway in Jacksonville. It's awesome.
Pimp. Like also like one thing where we're not even discussing. I mean, it was kind of briefly touched upon. Someone mentioned the transfer portal. Like if you're a wide receiver and you're in the transfer portal, the big fish next year is Arch Manning. Like they can't go and get you can't have 9 million guys in the receiver room. Yeah. How many? Because they know that if you're a transfer, they're going to be able to get whatever offensive transfer they want. Whether Arch like actually lives up to the hype in a full season of starting, we really don't know yet. We think and hope and speculate that he will because of his swagger and his raw ability and talent and what we've seen in glimpses. But if you're an offensive player in the transfer portal, that's the number one NIL athlete, period, point blank, all time thus far. It's the most televised. It will be the most televised and talked about player all next season, for better or for worse. You're going to want to be a part of that. So a guy like you guys said, like Micah Hudson, and again, going back to it, also if you go to the Devin Sanchez that you mentioned, Ohio State's still Ohio State. They still make a ton of money and throw a ton of money, and they still produce. Like Caleb Downs transferred from Alabama to Ohio State, and he had an incredible season. Denzel Burke's another corner. Like Toss talked about, like, Oklahoma being a school that had consistency at the offensive line position that they could point to their rich history of. Ohio State can do that in the defensive backfield in the last few years better than we can. Although, shout out Brandon Jones and PJ Locke as the safety duo in Denver that we really haven't talked about yet. That's kind of sick. Yeah, epic. But like there is still a little momentum. Having a recruiting class year one in the SEC, being in the SEC championship year one, having the top recruiting class after the early signing period, you can ask for better. We should ask for better. We will ask for better. But objectively, like, this is as good as you could have hoped for, in my opinion.
Yeah. I know. I feel like we're just a little spoiled lately, and we just want more. Just give me another taste.
Yeah, give me everything tonight.
I mean,
Gotcha.
look, this is a big step up. We were the number 6th recruiting class last year. In 2023, we were the 3rd. So we've made some significant leaps and bounds here, and just in terms of the trail. I mean, Sark is, he's just put on a clinic, and I think guys are starting to really figure out that this is the best home for them. I mean, obviously, money talks too. We're able to offer more money than anyone else probably in the entire nation when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it helps that, the Lambos are parked outside. But I mean, winning cures all too, like the success we're having on the field, like that translates, and the success that some of the guys are having that have raised their draft stock that, are seniors now, or even the guys like who are freshmen who are playing out of their minds, like Colin Simmons, who we haven't mentioned yet, but who's now on the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year list. Like, that's stuff that you really have to look at. That's not predictable. That's stuff that just happens.
Yeah. I also, this game that we played, this rivalry game against Texas A&M, I can't speak enough. Obviously, I'm watching with, burn orange sunglasses on. But if I try and remove those as best I can, how can you watch him coach, Steve Sarkisian, and not feel like, one, that he has swag as a coach, a guy that not only do you believe as a player, oh, he's a guy that knows X's and O's, how to get it done on the field, but also like a leader of men who I'm buying into, because anyone who's played at any level of sports, whether it's high school or middle school or collegiate or professional, maybe a little bit less professionally because you're getting a paycheck, it is your job. The coach matters, but you suss out very quickly, like, this is a cool coach. This coach gets how the game is played. This coach is hard-nosed and really tough. Like, there are different vibes of coaches and different guys respond. And I think Sark has this nice combination of, he's swaggy, he's tough-nosed, he understands the space, he's a savant, but also after we won that game, he's a guy that cares about his players, and he's a guy that respects people, whether they're his opponents or himself or his team. And he went out and he said, no, get off of the middle of this field. We're not going to do this. This isn't going to be who we are. And in the post game, they talked to him first, then they talked to Trey Wisner. What Sark said was not anything Kirby-esque, right? Not to compare the guy that we're about to coach against, but he was not bad. He was not shit-talking A&M. It was just about, we did what we needed to do. We came into an awesome environment and we took care of business. It wasn't like, oh, look at us, we're all high and mighty. Let the fans do that. And guess what? Texas fans are doing that big time. We are, for sure, because we've gotten to the SEC championship and we're proud of that. But he is all business. And Trey Wisner stepped up and he said, I got an opportunity and I made the plays. And it like, that's not verbatim, but that's what he said. It wasn't like
retired 26.
He wasn't like everybody doubted me. Everybody didn't think I could do it, and I proved them wrong. It wasn't that. It was just like, I came prepared and I did I put my hard hat on and I went to work, and that's what it was.
That's winning. That's just a winning culture. I think that's what it really comes down to, right? Like, I think if you look at years prior when we have chips on our shoulders, right? When we're like, are we a bowl team? Are we able to put together a winning season, right? And can we shock the world? Like, those are the times that, even the Sam Ellinger moments, right? Like, we're back, like him and Tom Herman had like, some testy post-game pressers. The Sabans of the world never have to do that, right? They don't like crap talk anyone. They just pretty much, they talk about their team. If they lose, they beat themselves. Like that's what it really comes down to, right? And so I think Sark is kind of taking a page from that book as well. But yeah, you're exactly right with the planting of the flag that happened all weekend long with every single rivalry game that we saw. I'm so glad that was
The
not
only
us.
ones that like really didn't. We're the only ones that like really didn't try to do it.
Right, because
Like,
it looked tacky for every other school. And think
I
about
mean,
it, every other school that did it, Michigan did it, right? They're not even bowl eligible. Like,
that's actually the only one I like doing it because
I
they
gotta be honest.
suck.
I
We
like
shouldn't have
all of
won
them
that game.
because I like all of them. Like part of me doesn't want to be the people that do that, but part of me also loves it because that's what college football is all about. These rivalries that
Sure.
mean something that get people, as long as no one's getting hurt, right? Then like
That's the Michigan one.
Yeah, talk as much shit as you want. But I like how we handled ourselves because we've on this show also said, a lot of the things that our team is being criticized for throughout the entire season, especially in the back quarter of it when college football playoff rankings were coming out. You guys didn't play anybody, blah, 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 blah. We said at the beginning of the season, we knew that we had an easier schedule, but that didn't mean that we weren't going to take care of business. We still had to take care of business, and that's exactly what we did. And here we are.
Yeah.
So
I'm done with that dumbass argument for real because the teams, the easy schedule, those teams beat good teams. Those teams beat the quote unquote good teams. I'm so fucking fed. We're cussing a lot on this one. I'm so fed up with this argument.
There's also like a massive distinction between like Indiana's 60th ranked strength schedule versus like ours 30th or something. Like it's just different. It is.
We didn't play the good teams, but the teams that we played and beat those good teams. And don't tell me that doesn't matter. That's a large portion of what the committee is building things upon. It's so ridiculous. That I hate that argument. I love I was watching Hard Knocks clips. I'm not saying Sark is Mike Tomlin, but you talk about swag, a guy you want to play for, and again, Taylor, Stefanski, and Harbaugh all also featured. All also seem like guys I would, if you're a player, want to play for. Good head coaches, guys that have won before. I mean, Harbaugh's won. Taylor's been there. Stefanski's the reigning coach of the year. Like, those are all really good head coaches. You watch all four of those guys speak in the clip. There is just something a little bit different about Mike Tomlin. And I'm not saying Sark is that guy, but I mean, yeah, Harbaugh has one too.
I know, but I think that will change even more. The comfortability that Sark has in himself right
when
now
he has that ring. But I'm saying, I'm the line, like Sark is on that.
Gotta get one, right? Get the monkey
on that path. He's on that path, and if he gets this monkey off his back in Georgia,
yeah, I think we're all in lockstep right here.
That's a good point. I also didn't realize what you were saying when you said that you were wearing like Longhorn tinted sunglasses. And then I kind of put two and two together. So I had like an image in my mind of you sitting on the couch, like actually wearing.
No. Instead of rose colored,
which I'm like, that's really out of character of you.
Instead of rose colored glasses, as they say.
No, you're right. I was like, I had a dumb blonde moment for a second, but I was like,
quickly on Trey Wisner. This is kind of a fun, cool thing for those who play College Football 25 on Ultimate Team every week. They basically release new players that you can get, right? New player cards. And there's this one player pack that's called Rising the Ranks. And basically they highlight guys who play well that week and they give them like a high rating of a card. So like Jalen Walker had one, he was the first one when he had that huge game against us. We've seen like Evan Neal do it for Kansas. This week it was Trey Wisner, and he is ranked the best running back in the game right now, behind Alvin Kamara. They have him rated as a 94 overall running back.
Wow.
Could they put Kamara in?
Yeah, Kamara just made the cut this week. So Texas has like the top I think 3 of the top 15 players on the board. Calvin Banks, Isaiah Bond, and Alvin Kamara, or not Alvin Kamara, Trey Wisner.
Yeah, I mean, he's been sick the last 2 weeks. Like, we've got our running back. We're running the ball incredibly well.
He's confident too.
I just feel a wee bit better than I did last. I'm happy we see them again. I think this is what we want. If we can't beat them twice, shame on us.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, we're locked in no matter what. So a loss doesn't end our season, but it would be really nice to beat them, to grab a bye, and to leave no doubt in anyone's mind that we should be as good as we are.
We're going to talk about it with Quan, but yes, the bye was arguing with some stupid Notre Dame fans. Join a conference. Bro, you are literally signing up for an extra game every year. It doesn't make any sense. Because you know what? What if that game's against Alabama? Oh, Alabama shouldn't be in.
Well,
Alabama doesn't deserve to be in. Oh, but then Alabama is Alabama, and it's Jalen Milroe and it's Kalen DeBoer. By the way, both guys have been there before to the college football playoff, and they go on a run. Like, why are you signing up for that early? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, you also might be signing up to play SMU and Boise State back-to-back weeks. So seeding is always going to be interesting with the college football playoff.
Know that that's the case, though.
No, of course. I'm just saying, like, there is the opportunity and the possibility that a team could have a very easy, quote unquote, easy path in comparison to having to go through Georgia, then Texas. If we win, we take care of business, and then you have to play Georgia first, then you have to play us, versus having to play SMU and then Boise State. A little different. It's a little different.
Well, if SMU wins and Boise State wins, and let's say Georgia wins, does Georgia jump both of them? And are they? What if? I mean, Georgia could be 3 and SMU could be 2. Theoretically,
they could be, but I can tell you what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for the SMU Mustangs to lose, because that would bump out. That's the hypothetical that bumps out the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I don't believe that they should be in the playoff. And
wait, you're saying if SMU loses, they bump out Alabama?
Because Clemson gets in.
Because Clemson would be the ACC championship. And based off of what the committee said last night, no one is going to be docked for losing a conference championship, which I don't.
So that means SMU's in if they lose then?
Yeah.
No?
Yes. Yeah. But Clemson's automatically in, which means Bama's toast.
But obviously, if Clemson loses where they stand in the rankings right now, they would not be in as an at-large. Of course, they don't deserve to be in. But that would be kind of hilarious, I think, and it would also be even more frustrating for South Carolina fans, because then they'd be like, not only is Alabama not making it, but now Clemson is in, the team that we beat. I don't understand. We beat them.
Oh, I'd be livid.
I'd be livid. I'd be furious. But
I'd be furious. But I also disagree with you that it's my pick was not South Carolina. My pick was the Ole Miss. My pick was the Ole Miss Rebels. I don't
get that, but yeah, that's.
I mean, they beat South.
Who do you think out of the 3? Sure, that was week 3.
Out of Bama,
but it still
Ole Miss, South Carolina.
It does not count.
Yeah. Out of those 3 teams,
who should get in? I think South Carolina. I mean, I think like all their losses that they had were, stronger teams. Obviously Ole Miss had a couple of losses that were suspect. Kentucky, Florida, they did lose to LSU as well. Obviously Bama got blown out by 3 touchdowns by OU. So I think South Carolina, in terms of just resume, have the best resume and the least ugly losses. Now, I mean, I don't think they have that many impressive wins. So I think that's what you got to consider as well. I mean, obviously they just beat Clemson, but it's a rivalry game, and we probably don't think Clemson's as good as they're ranked either. But I guess if you're looking at a head-to-head too, like Ole Miss did beat South Carolina, so I would say between those two. But that
was their worst loss of the year. South Carolina was against Ole Miss, and Georgia, and Ole Miss beat Georgia, and Georgia beat Clemson worse. Fine, you want to say it's earlier and teams get hot later? You can make that argument for Florida has been really hot since we beat them.
It's the big just connecting the dots. It's the big puzzle, where it's like this person beat this person. That it's
to me, Alabama losing to Oklahoma immediately makes me believe that they shouldn't be in, because that's the largest margin of loss and late in the season by any of those 3 teams. So
that's fine.
And here's my case. And this is, I thought that I was listening to Todd McShay talk about this today. I thought it was an excellent point. In the guidelines of how the committee makes their rankings, player availability is something that is involved in how the committee delineates in both directions. So if a guy is missing for a game, they can look at a particular game with a different perspective on it, as they did last year, right? They said Jordan Travis is not playing. Florida State can't make the playoff, right? Because we don't want to watch them play, and we don't think they're the exact same team if he's not their quarterback. And they were absolutely right. And I thought they made the right decision in that case, even though Florida State was undefeated. Sellers missed the entire second half as I got reprimanded by a bunch of South Carolina fans because I said in the fourth quarter, he missed the entire second.
Understand because it's even proves your point better.
But they were just because they're ornery and they're upset about what happened because he missed the entire second half. They were up 17-0 against LSU before he went down. So to me, is the committee pointing to that game and saying they for sure would have lost if he hadn't gone out in the second half? Because I believe that if he plays that game, they beat LSU and it's not even close. They lost on the last drive on a lot of suspect penalties. Forget the penalties. This is what Todd McShay is saying. Forget the penalties. And Sean McDonough said the same thing to him. He said the first half, South Carolina was dominating that game. So if they don't lose that game, they're a 2-loss team who's only lost to 2 ranked opponents who are also in this conversation, and they would have been a top 10 team going into the college football rankings. They would not have made the SEC championship, but they would have had a 6-0 finish to their season and have been a 2-loss South Carolina team. To me, I get that head-to-head clearly by the committee has become the most important thing. But if that's the case, why is Georgia not ranked ahead of us? Seriously.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Seriously.
Because they have 2 losses.
Okay, but they beat us. Though.
I know, but they're still going by the 1 loss, 2 loss, 3 loss as much as they possibly can.
Do we think they should? Though? I don't think they should. Win-loss is not.
But they are, because at the end of the day, Indiana has 1 loss. Do we think Indiana would beat South Carolina, Bama, or Ole Miss? No chance. No chance.
So my biggest gripe is I want the best teams in there, not the teams that the committee deems by their ranking system. I want the best.
I would say yes, but at the same time too, if you're going just by like how the NFL breaks things down too, right? Like, for instance, the Chiefs, they're 11-1, right? You look at their 1 loss and you're thinking to yourself, oh, like, that was a suspect loss. They've played close games. Like, you're not keeping the Chiefs out. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that Indiana is the Chiefs, but if you're going by wins and losses, and if you're a 1-loss Power 5 or Power 4 now conference team, then like you should get in.
But here's the ugly truth of it all, is that that's the way the NFL goes, because the NFL, even though so many teams are only quote unquote contenders and other teams are bottom of the barrel, we know they're going to be a top 10 pick, and that doesn't necessarily change that much. The parity of how close those teams are together week in, week out, anybody can lose on any given Sunday. And I believe that the SEC is a deeper and more talented conference. This is my personal opinion, and you cannot compare it to the Big Ten, and you can not this year. Sometimes, yes, but not this year. You cannot compare it to the ACC, and you certainly can't compare it to any of the other conferences that are not Power 4.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and so that's why I think it has to be looked at differently, and that a 3-loss SEC team is different than a 2-loss ACC team, and SMU will make it based off what they said.
But a 1-loss Indiana team, like they're for sure in. I mean, they're only lost.
No. I know they're in. I just think, like, to me, I'm like, okay, cool. They should
fine, but we'll see what they can do, like Cinderella wise. The reason I'll say Ole Miss has 3 losses by a combined 13 points. They lost in overtime at LSU. They lost to a really hot Florida team. When we played Florida, we're like, oh, we're going to beat the crap out of them. A big reason why was because Lagway was out.
Not the only reason why, but the only reason why we beat them by that much is because Lagway
was. I mean, they're a team that's gotten better towards the end as well. People are talking about. So out the swamp is a tough loss by 7 in the fourth quarter. The Kentucky thing, fine. Like, you can't lose that game, and I'm with you. Like, Lane Kiffin,
that team's bad. Kentucky's
not bad. You got to win that game, but they played Georgia pretty tight as well, and they were. Again, that was a team that was playing better football earlier on in the season. The caveat between Ole Miss and South Carolina is, like, they had Sellers in that game. I know it was early, but it was at South Carolina, and they went in and they beat the crap out of them. That's just like my only point to Ole Miss. And I also like the craziest win of the year is like, they scored 63 points against Arkansas. Like they when they're on. That defense and that team is in my personal opinion, of at least caliber players, like NFL talent, like real skill on that team. I like that team a lot. Like, I think that, like, Trey Harris, the receiver, they have a bunch of dudes on the defense. To me, that team is incredibly strong. I get maybe like Lane Kiffin just can't get it done. Like, I don't know what to do.
I do think they have the benefit of being more under people's microscope, under macro college football media personalities talking about who are going to be the teams. I do think, not that you're falling prey, but this is certainly like a truth of it, is that people were talking about the Ole Miss Rebels, Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, way more than they were talking about South Carolina, Coach Beamer, and Sellers. And I think Sellers might be just as good of a quarterback as Jackson Dart and as Jalen Milroe. He's played that well. And I think they're just, some of it is the name of South Carolina is not as big as Alabama. Obviously, it's not as big as Alabama because look where we are. And it's interesting. And it's a debate, certainly. Like, it's a really fun one, honestly.
Debate. I mean, I just have to get this one thing on my chest, and Ole Miss is against Ole Miss. Like, one of the beauties of us scheduling Michigan, you enter in the lines then early, or Alabama early. You enter into the lines then early, but just you start your season. You get it going against a good team. Like, Ole Miss is beginning Furman, MTSU, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. Like, it shouldn't be like that big of a shock that they got punched in the mouth in their first real test. They skated by the first 4 weeks. They're playing layup. They're doing layup lines the first 4 weeks. They are. Like, other teams are playing good teams.
Yeah.
Schedule somebody early. Get your guys going early. Everyone's taking a back seat. And there's no surprise they came back the next game, which was the South Carolina game. It's like, oh, that's the Ole Miss team we thought we were going to see. Like, it's not. It doesn't surprise me. Like, he just. I get them, the athletic director. They called a weak schedule early on, and I don't know. Lane Kiffin just might be the James Franklin of the South until he maybe beats Oregon.
Hey, but James Franklin has a chance to rewrite the narrative on himself this year.
Yeah, but James Franklin never. James Franklin never loses against a team that they're better than. That's not his Achilles heel. His Achilles heel is he can't win the big game. But they take care of business, and they have. And that's
they got the grace of God to beat USC. But
well, I mean, that's why the Rebs aren't in, is because they lost to Kentucky, who's just not a good team. And
if we look at USC's season, though, their margin of loss is like that. I think the number one in the country. Like, they've lost close games. Like, every loss is like a 1-score game. So
yeah, Alabama's 2 points.
In a different world, USC's record is completely different.
Oh my God!
Which USC are you talking about?
I'm talking about Southern California.
Got it.
I mean, they lost to Michigan by 3. They lost to Minnesota by 7. They lost to Penn State by 3. They lost to Maryland by 1. They lost to Washington by 5. And then last week they lost to Notre Dame by 2 scores. But
that was like a little misleading because they started turning. They had a pick 6 late and turned the ball over. Like, you're 1,000%. You're 1,000,000% correct.
Two pick sixes, a 99-yarder and 100-yarder.
Yeah. You're 9,000,000% correct about the USC Trojans. Like, they just lost close games, and like, there's a reason we're not even talking about Miami, is because Miami played teams incredibly tight the entire year. And I don't know if you guys watched that Miami Syracuse game. I was screaming at the TV, infuriated when he decided to kick that field goal. Yeah. I was blown away that he decided to kick that field goal. That was the least ballsy move I've ever seen in his nuts went into his stomach. That was no nut November, dude. Like, that was awful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the saying, right? Scared money don't make money. At the end of the day, like, they blew it. Like, like, you're coaching for a shot in the playoff. Like, coach like it. Don't play it safe.
Yeah, that Xavier,
you have everything to lose.
The Restrepo fumble really hurt me to my core, because I hope that people understand that the reason why Miami is not in the playoff is not because of that kid. It's because their defense is terrible. That's why.
Can't stop a nosebleed.
No, I mean, in another world too, Cam Ward is, the Heisman favorite, and, did everything he could. But obviously we've got 2 amazing other position players in Genty and Travis Hunter that are probably going to steal it from him. But still, like, there's no blemish on the season that he had. Like, he might have worked himself into being the top quarterback taken in the draft, or maybe the second quarterback taken in the draft. So kudos to him in Miami.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other separate conversation. I'm locked in. Locked in on Shador. I love him. I think he's great. But again, I'll close it out where we started with the recruiting. Toss, I think you said winning cures all. Or was Nick, one else who said it? Winning cures all, right? And
I can't take credit. I can't take credit for that.
That's the wrong way. I'm this way.
Winning cures all. Like, Julian Lewis is the number 2 recruit, and like, Colorado's a 9-win team. Like, that matters. Not just Dion. Like, they're winning football games. Now they're getting big recruits. Like, their top offensive tackle recruit last year has a Maybach. Like, Bro, I'm
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
going to Colorado.
winning players all in many different ways, right? Like, obviously, players want to win, but then again, also people want to watch winning football teams. So that means more viewers, more eyes, more national media attention to the winning teams.
Yeah, we could do another power ranking another time, but Colorado is top
I,
3 in the
I'm pretty
league.
pissed that they don't have a shot to get in this, honestly. Like for the exciting factor to see Travis Hunter and Shador in there and Dion in there, of course. But man, the Big 12 just cannibalized itself this year.
They
That's
had
like
it.
the Pac 12, basically.
They had it. They blew. You just can't lose that. We did it. You just can't lose that game to Kansas. You just can't.
No, but dude,
Yeah,
you're
but nobody teams
100%
lost
right. You're 100% right. But like Kansas, listen to this. They lost at Arizona State by 5. Then they beat the crap out of Houston. They lost at K-State by 2. Then they beat Iowa State. They went into BYU and beat them. And then they beat Colorado, only to lose to Baylor 45-17.
Yeah,
What a
the
waste.
weirdest team of all time.
The weirdest team of all time. Ruined the season again.
Yeah.
I hate.
I mean,
I hate
Arizona
Bill Self.
State's
I know
been
it's not
playing.
even football. I just have to say I hate Bill Self.
I do not like. I'll end it here. I do not want to see Arizona State in the college football playoff. What they did, in that game where they stormed the field and there was 1 second left on the clock and their fans were yelling at players and stealing helmets and their coach looked like a jackass on the field. Like, I don't want any part of that in the college football
He's a
playoff.
Looney Tune.
I
He's a
think they're-
Looney Tune.
I think they're better. I think they'll give someone a better game than Iowa State will.
They're going to beat Iowa State. I mean, they got Toby Gerhart 2.0. They're beating Iowa State. They got Toby G
He's a
Jr.
beast. That running back's a stud. He's been playing.
He's a
for
white bruiser.
The white bruiser. Yeah.
Gadabo's been playing for a long
When they said that.
My
Is it like
cousin goes, I can't believe they said that.
It's booked.
Yeah, it was like Booger and like the guy who does the ESPN halftime with him. He's like, wow, he's a white bruiser.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm here for
I mean, we'll take it. We'll take it. All right. Fisher this off was DJ Nicky Snacks Crowder. We'll see you guys later, or we'll see you another time. Huck 'em.
Peace.